Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight with me is Mr. Pixel, Mr. Gold Pixel, and we are reviewing our James Bond film franchise. We're on movie number 3, and that, of course, is from 1964, I believe, Goldfinger, the iconic James Bond movie that's considered one of the best, one of the most lampooned ones. And I think the film that Pixel really set the template for most of what we'd see in James Bond films in the decades to come, as it were, is this film being, 50 years old plus? Wow, it's been a long time. So let us start off with this as people start to get the notifications and file into our stream here, Pixel. For the past 2 weeks, when we covered James Bond, the first one, Dr. No, we liked it. We thought it was good. We liked, I think, generally speaking, the second one even better, From Russia with Love.
Mm-hmm.
We said that there was an improvement from 1 to 2. And this movie, going from Russia with Love to Goldfinger, I think, is a big jump. Not only did they increase the budget, it does feel like a huge, big budget tentpole film. The third one going forward back in the 60s. A massive hit from everything I've known about it. It's one of the first Bonds I've ever seen. And I got to tell you, I have a love-hate relationship with this because I think it is one of the best Bond films overall, no matter whether you're talking Connery or any of the other Bonds. And we'll get to ranking them much later on the stream as the months go by and we review the rest of the films here on the Xtreme Movie Show. But I have some bones to pick with it. I'm going to nitpick some of it. But overall, I think it's a great film. I think it's iconic. It's one of the few films of James Bond that I think almost every fan would say, hey, it's a great way if you're trying to watch a James Bond and you're not watching in order and pick one. You cannot go wrong with Goldfinger. What's your initial take on this film?
I mean, this is my second time watching it, and I forgot just how good it was. When I was watching it last time, there's a lot of space in between the times that I watched one Bond film to the next.
Right.
And so it was like, okay. Oh, these are good. But watching them back to back, you do see that growth for each film. And this one, it honestly just has the best villain out of the three. Out of all three, this is the most entertained I've been by one of Bond's foes.
You know, you bring up an interesting point there in Goldfinger being one of the better Bond villains. A part of me wants to argue that because what did we have in Dr. No From Russia with Love? We really didn't have a specific villain. We just had basically a goofball that Bond had to go up against in each of the films that were just lower level boss agents in the giant scheme of things. And this movie goes away from it. It has nothing to do with Spectre, has nothing to do with any of this other stuff. So it's kind of like a Bond movie all on its own. And it's got a lot of elements that I personally like in a Bond film. Unfortunately, I think this film turns into a little bit of an action film, but I think it was very difficult to be Goldfinger in this film for a lot of reasons we'll get into here in a moment. But I do agree with you. I think he's a strong one. But unfortunately, again, I'm going to say this a little bit with some of the scenes. There's some stupidity with Goldfinger and some of the things that Bond gets himself into that we just have to discuss as we go through. So let's start off.
You want to go ahead and start us out with our opening gambit, sir?
The opening gambit, to me, I like it. And one of the things that immediately comes to mind, and we've mentioned this before, I love these set pieces. They're not too overly complicated. They're busy enough where you can just watch it and everything else there too. And you see Bond in the middle of the night. He's swimming underwater going into, I guess, a heroin smuggling ring, and he gets it blown up. And, of course, he's got a woman checking him out, belly dancer that he goes to make sweet, sweet love to. Of course, he sees the bad guy in a reflection in her eye. And the one problem I have with Bond from this movie on is the convenience of everything. I mean, it's cool when he hops out of the wetsuit and he's got the tux on and everything. It's great. It's spy stuff. There's not a lot of talking going on. We're watching him be a spy and do spy stuff. So it's neat. And it's like Central America somewhere. And, of course, he's very successful in doing that. But of course, you get your stupid one-liner after he tosses the guy into the bathtub and his gun's over there, and the guy's about to grab it, and he just knocks over the space heater or whatever it is in there, and the guy goes up in this glorious glowing mess and get electrocuted, and he's like, shocking, positively shocking. But to me, this is typical Bond stuff. It's nonsensical. It's okay. It's supposed to hook you into it. It doesn't have to be related. I like the opening sequence before we even talk about the opening song. What was your take?
Yeah, no, I agree. Whenever he is going through, and then right after he sets up the facility, sets up the bomb, and goes ahead out, he meets contact at a bar, and the explosion sends everybody out of there, even this dancer that they had in the bar who was giving him the eyes. And the contact wants to get him on a plane pretty much immediately. And Bond says, I have something to handle first.
Yeah.
And we can guess where he's going as he goes right to her room, or I guess his room, where she's waiting. But
you know what the problem with this scene is, if you start to think about it? How do the bad guys know where he's at? How does Bond in literally a moment's notice see the reflection of her eye? And it's a cool scene.
yes.
It looks great. You're like, okay, whatever, and you let it go. But this is the theme we're going to talk about with some bigger scenes here.
So what I'm getting from it is that how he is in that moment, him staring at her eyes. She's not looking at him, and he can tell.
Yes.
And so in that moment, sees a reflection in her eye. And I really wish they hadn't had it as detailed as they had it, because then it could have seemed like, okay, wait, there's something dark behind me. But no, he looks in the eyes, sees the reflection, and it is a neat scene. You're right. It's kind of nonsensical. But that's when he gets the invader by throwing the girl around to take the hit for him. And then he knocks the guy into the tub after a quick scuffle, and the guy goes for Bond's gun. And that's when that's when he throws in the lamp, and he does get that line. Shocking. It's great.
But why doesn't the bad guy have a gun? Why doesn't they just shoot him? I don't care. Who cares, right? It's Bond, right? Yeah, so to me, again, like I say, the set pieces are fantastic, but what we got the gun barrel scene here with the music and all that, so that's the standard. But the more standardized thing to me is we get Shirley Bassey singing the theme song to Goldfinger, and you get the idea of these pictures moving around on people's bodies and stuff, and that's a common theme in
one
many
person's
of them.
Body.
Well, in this case, yes, but in general, it's a theme that we'll see later on with once, because you haven't seen all the Bond films or most of them. So the fact that we're seeing this now, it's awesome, because this is where it all starts. It really begins here to me. Shirley Bassey is just incredible with Bond things. I automatically think of her when I think of just a big, sexy, full of horns type of arrangement. This is a phenomenal Bond song. Even if you had no idea what was going on in this film, you knew it had something to do about gold, and I think that's very important.
Like this song is the best, especially out of the three we've seen thus far. But going into the future and how it's connected with Bond, you can hear a few of the other songs and not think about Bond at all for a hot minute there. But here, you cannot take this away from this movie. There's no doubt about that. And you're absolutely right. It's a fantastic song. It's the first time we've heard the song at the beginning of a movie, because last time in Russia, they played it at the end. But here, they were going breakout, and it is really good.
Yeah, they took it to a whole new level, and you definitely see that in this film, because after that, we go into what I think is just one of the more incredible Bond scenes, too, on all of these three films so far, and definitely one of my favorites, even since I was a kid. You and I are both here in Central Florida, although we may be an hour or so apart, physically speaking. I grew up here where we would go down to like South Florida for vacations and all that, Miami. I've been up and down the coast there, and I know you've been to some places. So this movie in the early 60s, 64, I believe, when it came out, to see some of old Florida allegedly with the fountain blue, this fly-in camera scene one shot take where they come around the fountain blue and you see everybody laying up by the pool. I had gotten an upgraded 4K print for this, and I wish I would have done this 20 years ago because it looks phenomenal. And even by 60 standards, I can only imagine how awesome this must have looked relative to things coming out in the day, because you see this one-stop shot, you see the cars leaving, it goes into the back part around the side of the hotel, the fountain blue, and you see the giant pool, you see the ocean in the back, everyone's laying out, and then of course it peels off where it flies over it, and you see one guy just basically going up and diving in. It's a phenomenal, huge, big shot that makes you feel like you're there in an elite level type hotel in the Fontainebleau in South Florida, 5-star resort. It's an incredible hotel. Of course, there's a ton more than now there than there were back then, and this was one of the gold standards. It still is by even today's standards.
Yeah, but I think it's a little cleaner looking back then than it is now.
It may be. I'm not going to argue that, but it's just a great scene. Again, it's a matter of convenience, and if you listen to it, because it goes quick, Bond's getting a massage, he spanks the girl in the fanny to run her away, but basically he's... Huh?
Deet. That's what she was called.
Isn't that like a chemical farmers use to kill stuff? I'm just saying. You're right. I think it's a weird name.
That's her name though. Dink. I'm sorry, Margaret Nolan. She is a lovely woman.
Yeah. People are really dressed up in Bond films. This guy's got a nice gray suit on. Bond's got his things here. And what I liked about this whole opening scene too is just the playing cards. He goes to spy on it, gets the key to Goldfinger's room. Of course, when
how he gets the key is so entertaining too, because he goes to the housekeeper who's going down the hall and says, "Oh, come here a moment." And he just unlocks the room. She's like, "You can't do that, sir. That's Mr. Goldfinger's room." He's like, I know. Move along." And he shuts the door.
But do you think he was trying to act swishy there?
I don't know. I don't know. I think he was trying to show off a little bit, but...
Yeah, for me, when he walks into Goldfinger's room and then he goes out and he sees Jill laying there and she's just kicking her leg up and all that, I'm like, that is just, this whole scene is iconic to me. The binoculars checking on it. This is Bond being cool, suave, everything. She gets excited about it and everything too. Of course, every woman he meets, he runs into is hot. He's never had to bone an ugly woman. But you just, of course, know this is going to be one of his potential love interests in the film. I love this opening bit all the way with getting set up. It's a way to meet our quote-unquote super villain, if you want to call him that too. He's got a great spread in his room when he's getting ready to sex her up too. He's got the salmon, he's got the cucumber wedges, and of course you've got the Dom Perignon. He gets all specific about it. He goes to get another bottle. Then we get the hand with Odd Job coming in. And then a part of me is like, why didn't you just kill him? Odd Job, were you there watching them get down and just waiting for a breather before round two to kill? When you apply your brains to the movie, sometimes it's hard to do it. But watching it again, I'm going, oh yeah, this is cool. I'm like, well, wait a minute, why didn't you just kill him?
I thought it was to send a message, but okay.
Maybe. But send a message to who? Somebody you don't know? The message, sir, was not Odd Job whacking him. It was covering her in gold.
The person who was spying on him, which is James Bond, messed up his game. And so to pay for that, what does he do? Oh, well, I'm going to go ahead and just kill off the lady you're sleeping with. And whenever we see her, whenever he comes back from the room, he went to go get another champagne bottle. But when he comes back and he sees her on the bed, just covered in gold paint.
It's awesome. As a kid, this kind of, when I was a kid, when I first saw this, maybe 9, 10 years old, it kind of creeped me out a little bit. It really did. I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. And it pulls very quickly from there. His vacation is ruined, you could say, as he goes back home. He goes back to London. And he knows who's responsible for this. He knows it's Goldfinger. If the gold woman wasn't enough to tell you. But M is saying that it is kind of Bond's fault. He was screwing around when he should have been on the mission.
That's right.
And he said he allowed this to happen when he got involved. But if he can't treat this mission objectively, he will replace 007 with 008. And of course, that doesn't happen. But Bond's able to handle it, and he said that if he knew what this was all about, then perhaps could have done something. But M says that he'll talk to him later, meet him at dinner, black tie, and he'll learn everything. We get one scene with Moneypenny. It's only one scene. It's very disappointing because him and Moneypenny have the best relationship in my mind. But this is where she tosses the hat for him. And again, they're talking about marriage. And that's when Bond says, "You think I'm joking, Moneypenny?" But that's when he quickly leaves and goes ahead to dinner.
Yeah, for me, this whole scene, I love M. He makes the most of his little opportunity that you see him in Bond films because he suffers fools like no other. He's not going to put up with any nonsense, and you still feel like he owns Bond's ass in here. Moneypenny's always been a delight the few times that we've seen her. And it's a small scene, but what's different in this one with Moneypenny is she takes his hat and throws it on the hat rack, whereas we've seen him do it at least once. I don't remember if it was the 2 films, but where he did it, I'm like, okay. And I always thought that was kind of one of those unspoken things they did. During the dinner scene, 2 things disturbed me greatly before I do my annual, we need to be on the gold standard rant that I do once every 100 videos we do. These guys have a great little spread. They're just basically drinking whiskey and smoking cigars. There's really no food there, even though it's a dinner date. So obviously it's din time. They get the guy that runs basically the gold depository banks in England talking about stuff. And this guy, despite the fact he's an older gentleman, he's dressed up as well in his culture as he can be. I told you I got a super ultra 4K print for this, and I'm watching it. So Bond's suit looks sharp with Moneypenny. They're all wearing the night gear here. I'm looking at this guy talk about the stuff, and while I want to listen to the information he's spouting, because it's the key thing for this film about the world being on the gold standard, which is extremely important, I'm staring at the guy, and then I looked at Bond, and I looked at M, and I went back and forth, and it's the entire time. And this guy, as an older gentleman, when you start growing hair in places you don't want it, he's got so much massive ear hair coming from that inner lobe going out, it's covering up his entire hole on both sides. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying not to see this and not look at it, but it's like the mole thing from Goldmember, which is not funny, but it's there. And I thought, okay, that's dumb humor, but I'm going, holy crap. All this time, I didn't think that was funny from Austin Powers. Did he get that here? Because this guy has hairy ears. It's disgusting. You don't want to see it. But the guy
didn't notice that.
It's disgusting. It creeps me out so bad. I want to run and get my hair shaver, and I have to fast forward this now from any time I go to rewatch it. But it brings out in the wrapped in green felt the awesome looking bar of Nazi gold. I don't know if that word is to be used a lot, but basically when the Nazis stole all these works of arts and people's money, they would melt it down and put it in different places, and they'd hide it in places, and stuff's got lost over the years. It's kind of neat, makes for neat side adventure stories. But that's going to be Bond's hook to meet Goldfinger later. So yeah, I like all this. I think it's good. We see Bond being a snob, talking about the differences with stuff. We get the serious introduction to with Q Branch and his devices. And I'll just go ahead with this and pause in a moment. It's neat seeing Q because Q's in charge and he doesn't suffer Bond, like a fool either. I've always loved that about Q. They have the best, sharpest dialogue with each other. The Aston Martin looks sweet. I like that he has a homing device and not too many crazy stuff, but I've got to be honest. I've said this before. I like when Bond's a spy movie, not an action film. And I don't like cars with gadgets. It just does not do it for me. And I understand that's a thing with Bond, and I love awesome cars with Bond. But it gets a little ridiculous in this film for me, which, it's not going to ruin the film for me by any means. But anyway, it's the real first detailed, hey, this is the stuff I'm working on scene. You better not screw this crap up, Bond. Here's how it works. I take my stuff very seriously. Stop effing around. I love it. It's a great scene.
We got a little bit of that last time, but it's not nearly as much as this one. And... whenever he's talking about the car and he lifts the little cap off of the handle right there, and shows the red button. See this red button? Do not push it. It will eject the passenger seat if you press it. And so Bond looks at him and says, ejector seat? Are you kidding? And that's when Q actually says, I never kid about my work. And it's just, it is ridiculous, but it's so fun. It's just so fun. And you know what? Speaking of fun, it goes right into the next scene where Bond, comes face to face with Auric Goldfinger. And they're going to be playing golf. Because Goldfinger likes to play his games. He likes to win them, though. But Bond's going to do his best. I think he says something at the beginning along the lines that golf's not really my game. And quickly, whenever they're playing, Goldfinger wants to know why Bond is there. And Bond, he pretty much cuts to the chase by taking the gold bar and tossing it on the green.
Yep, right from Lice button.
Mm-hmm. And that catches his eye. And Goldfinger instantly goes for, okay, well, how about this? Why don't we play for your bar of gold? He says, that's worth 5,000 pounds or something like that. And Goldfinger says, well, I'll match it, of course, but make it interesting. And that's when they go ahead and they keep going. At one point, the ball gets lost in the brush. I don't play golf often.
It's called the rough. It's off the fairway, yes. They got like 3 holes to go, and they're going to screw around with Goldfinger. Yeah. Yeah,
because he can't find his ball for a good bit. And I believe he said, well, 5 minutes, and it's going to cost you a stroke. And that's when Goldfinger's starting to freak out a little. That's when Oddjob goes over and he drops a ball down his pant leg. And he's like, oh, here. And Goldfinger's like, oh, there it is. And Bond has this caddy by him. He's like, if that's his original ball, I'm Arnold Palmer. And Bond says, no, that's not his original. And he says, how do you know? Because I'm standing on it. And he shows it. And that's when he says that they're going to have a little fun with Goldfinger. Something, I believe it's around the last hole, that Bond actually gets to finally switch it with another number, because the number of ball you're playing with is important in golf, I guess.
You have to hit your ball and play your ball from tee to green. You can't switch balls out or whatever. If you lose them, you get penalized and stuff. And if you play another ball, so if a ball's lost like it was here and you play somebody else's, that's the whole thing he's doing it, because golf is, really strict that way.
Mm-hmm. And so whenever he gets that last hit into the hole and Bond takes out the ball, and Goldfinger's feeling good because he just won. That's when he says, wait a minute, you're playing with a number 1, aren't you? And then this is a 7. And we are playing under the strictest rules. So this means that you forfeit the match. And Goldfinger looks at the ball, tosses it, and just walks off. Just his manner about towards Bond after that, he has nothing to play around with, I guess, because quickly Bond goes over the car. And one of the gadgets that Bond had was a Homer device. And he puts it into the car. I'm not sure exactly where at this moment, but and as Goldfinger's coming back, he compliments it and says, it's nice. And Goldfinger then says about how this is the second time they've met, and both times he's cost him. And Bond is trying to act like, what are you talking about? No, but he can't worm his way out. And that's when Oddjob takes off his hat to show exactly the power Goldfinger has with him, and he tosses it at a statue. I didn't think you cared for Oddjob's hat. I when watching it, every time it came up, I knew Rob's not going to care for that.
I'm waiting for my turn.
Okay, well, go ahead. He tosses it, knocks the head off of the statue.
This Goldfinger's golf scene is one of the best in Bond movies. I love it. I think it's fantastic. There is a lot to digest here, and I'll touch upon things that you didn't that I think make this really well. It's obviously Bond is British. Golf is from Scotland, not technically Britain, but obviously it's considered a higher end sport. They're much like tennis was, long things for the elite thing, the elite class. And this is at a wonderful park, and it's all outside. This country club is still in existence today. You get a feeling like we did at the Fontainebleau that you're like the grade A place on the world that only a person like Bond could go to, you know, an elite person could go to. So you're living this fantasy out with Bond. You're like, wow, dressed up, going to play a sport, going to be really, really good at it, going to compete with somebody. I'll say this about Goldfinger. He isn't as genetically predisposed to traits that we may prefer in a male like a Sean Connery. In terms of his look, I will simply say that, and I'm not being negative here. I'm trying to be constructive. He's dressed impeccably too, even though he's got like a skinny fat kind of body to him. He would be what I think you'd call an autumn. So his reddish complexion and his skin, the colors he suit, which also happen to be goldish colors, work beautifully for him. So you see two guys that dress impeccable. They make the best with what they've got. There's a scene in here where, as you're saying, when they're doing the shilling a hole, you know, gentleman's wager, really small bet per hole. Then they up the ante. You're seeing two alphas go at it, trying to do it in a socially acceptable way. And this is one of the things as guys that we mark out over and think it's great. And, you know, women and girlfriends go, this is boring. What the hell? They're playing golf. This is stupid. It's going on for 15 minutes. No, this is awesome. Typically, when you're playing golf, generally speaking, if you and I were playing and you got within about a foot of the hole, I'd say, okay, just take it. Meaning I wouldn't make you hit it. But when they cut to Bond, Bond's like, do you want me to play it? And he says yes. He wants them to tap it in, even though it's like a 6-inch putt, because he's not being gentlemanly that way. Goldfinger is, whereas Bond's like, you know, would be fine with it. So it's just one of those little nuanced things that are like, it has to do with their personality, because we know Goldfinger's cheating. He's trying to get an advantage. Yeah. Bond's trying to use his intellect to outsmart him. And it was even going into last hole after playing a full round. The editing for this whole scene, I think, is fantastic because, like I say, it's outdoors. It's quiet. There's nothing else going on except for them and their caddies behind them. Very little talking. Like I say, it's just two guys going at the good guy versus bad guy in a socially acceptable standard, no matter how rare it is and exclusive. The birds are chirping. It makes this whole scene. This, again, is such a beautiful film. This is such a wonderful scene, but you're right. I don't hate Oddjob himself. I think the guy's fine, but I keep going back to Goldmember or Austin Powers. Really? Who throws their shoe? When this hat thing flies, even as a kid, I went, that's kind of silly. I mean, at first I almost thought it was cool. Like, what is that? I guess it doesn't strike fear or concern in me when I see this guy that goes, and throws his hat. It just doesn't. I know he's supposed to be like a manservant, whatever, but yikes. So much for 60s aesthetics. But I will tell you, the next scene is, to me, very good as well. When you're watching a Bond movie, I've always talked about how, especially now there are 3 films in, there's parts in the 2 previous films and this one, where, like I say, you feel like you're there, but then they change the location. When we're in Istanbul, we ended up on the Orient Express. When we're in Jamaica, we ended up going basically to the small island, off of where they were staying, Dr. No's lair. Okay. Here we're going from playing at some elite level golf and country club to Switzerland. And where they're driving, passing by these buildings, the Hotel Belvedere and a few others, those are actual places. I mean, this is what the Alps look like. He's tracking them in his car, and it's a sweet ride. Don't get me wrong. This woman's appearing in this, I think it's a Mustang, trying to get past him or whatever. There's not really a chase. Bond's like disciplined, like he doesn't want to chase the hot woman or whatever like that. It's kind of funny. And it's a really well-staged scene as far as Goldfinger pulling off the side with Oddjob where some kids are at. He's buying some like food, some fruits or whatever off the side. Bond's above him on a cliff up looking down. And then above him, a gunshot rings out. It's the lady in the car. Almost hits Bond with it. He takes off, chases her down. Turns out, you know, they have this little cat and mouse with what's going on. And we don't know exactly what's going on, but the only thing I didn't like about this scene is like Oddjob's had. I didn't like the crap here in the car where Q doesn't even mention he's got the tire splitter, if you will, the thing that comes out of his tire and grinds up her car because he wrecks her. Of course, she doesn't die where she doesn't really hit her head. It's those horrible sped up 60s kind of special effects.
You sure he doesn't?
I'm pretty sure.
He could have just called it what it officially is called.
He had like the gun.
Oh, here's a fancy tire splitter.
He didn't mention, but I don't believe that he did. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure I'll get corrected on that if I am, but I don't believe that he did. So it's just little things like that I noticed because like, well, wait a minute, he didn't mention this. This is pretty violent. He drops her off. He continues following Goldfinger. Finds Auric Enterprises, one of his industrial workplaces that he goes to spy on later at night. And I love it. He's waiting until it's dusk. He sneaks in. He hears something called Operation Grand Slam. Of course, there's a lot of Chinese dressed people around here. Commies, in other words, to the layperson, especially in the 60s to the Big Red Scare. And they talk about melting down his Rolls Royce with, you know, and that's how he's transporting his gold around because he flies his Rolls Royce wherever he goes. It's like, oh, that's how he gets around stuff. So this whole sequence here, what's your take?
You know, I know this came out way later, but all I can ever think of whenever I think about the car, oh, the gold is the car, is a movie called Tower Heist, where he had the car inside of his room because he didn't leave his hotel room. Mm-hmm. Man who owned the hotel pretty much, but just the car made out of gold, and that's kind of a cool way to do it. But this scene, we are missing an important detail here, because while he uses the tire splitter to knock a car to the side, there's a lovely young woman in there, and he ends up helping her out by giving her a ride to the closest garage. And he kind of has some suspicion about her because he felt like he was getting shot at earlier. And this woman passed him. And then here they are meeting again on the road. And she has this one case that, of course, he recognizes. He had one like it just 2 movies ago, or the last one, maybe, where that's where she keeps her sniper rifle. And she claims it's for her ice skates. And he says something, it's a lovely sport. His facial expressions all during the scene, he seems bemused with her. And I just felt like we needed to touch upon that before he drops her off and she's just going to walk to a hotel. And that's when he gets to this building. And you're absolutely right. This is exactly what we look for. This is super spy James Bond. He's getting information, and it all could have turned out all right if it wasn't for the fact that after he leaves the facility and he's waiting again outside, he hears somebody, and he makes out the figure, and somebody's setting up a sniper rifle and holds it carefully, and that's when he tackles him from behind. And with a quick turnabout, we know who it is. But this is the first time that he's learning that this woman, is the sniper. And he asks, why were you shooting at me? And she's like, I wasn't shooting at you. I was shooting at Goldfinger. He killed my sister. And we learn that this is Tilly Masterson, sister of Jill Masterson, who was painted gold. But they don't get a lot of time to talk. Why? Because whenever he tackled her, the rifle went up into the air and there was a wire set up. And so it goes against the wire and instantly the people inside are alerted. And they go out and head towards him. So Bond takes Tilly along and they quickly rush back to his car. And I'm not. I know you aren't a big fan of all the car gadgets, but it's a lot of fun to watch him go ahead. Okay, here's some smoke. Here's some oil, and we see the cars drifting off to the side. One goes down a mountain and explodes. It's a lot of fun.
You mean it explodes and then it goes down the mountain?
Yeah, I know. I know what they were going for, Rob.
And after the oil slick, the other cars following aren't affected at all.
Yeah, no.
And remember the whole thing about the steel line top hat Oddjob has with deadly efficiency, cutting through that Florentine marble statue that's probably 300 and 400 years old at the country club. He throws it at Jill Masterson, and she gets like a boo-boo, and of course she's dead, and doesn't decapitate or anything. That would be really freaking cool and scary, which they're not going to have. I get it. And then the 20 or so guys chase them down, or whether they're firing at them, and then of course they capture him and don't kill him because they were shooting at him and now they're not. I don't get it. And then we have this little clown car chase scene, like you say, to your point, it's at night, but it's around the industrial park area, and of course it's an excuse to get all the gadget playing, and I'm not liking it. But what is interesting to me is Bond gets captured after running through the styrofoam wall, and because he sees a bad image in the mirror or something. It's interesting because Bond spends pretty much the rest of this movie a prisoner. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
Because the next scene you get is the iconic one. Moby, the musician that was really popular about 20 years ago, did the theme to the beach, a few other things. He did a techno remix as James Bond, which I liked. I enjoyed it. Thought it was fantastic if you're into that kind of music. And then, of course, halfway through, it's the old, "Do you expect me to talk? No, I expect you to die." One of the most iconic Bond lines in there, with an industrial laser, something that really hadn't been around at that time. I thought this is a cool way of implementing technology in a Bond film.
It was great.
But again, Goldfinger, couldn't you just turn the laser off, say, "Well, what do you know?" "Okay, let me go ahead and zap you with it." "Oh, wait, you know it?" "Okay." And instead of saying, "No, I've got something better for you to do," it just doesn't make sense, and Bond's reaching, going, "Well, I know about Grand Slam, and so does everybody else." It's like, well, okay, but they were shooting. I'll let it go.
Well, so what he's saying is, if he kills 007 right there.
Your take.
Yeah. 007, if he does not report, they're going to send 008. 008 already has information about Grand Slam and has a better chance of stopping him if 007 doesn't report in. If he dies, then, well, Goldfinger's operation is at risk, and Goldfinger can't have that. And he waits until the last possible moment, Goldfinger, and says, finally, "Okay, stop it." He can't chance somebody else coming in with the information and having a better chance at stopping him. Because before, it would have been a fool's errand. Like with Bond, if he hadn't had Grand Slam there, he would have had nothing for Goldfinger to consider him worth keeping. So it's just keeping him alive so that way that they don't have to deal with somebody else coming in and risking the operation.
Allegedly.
Well, I mean, that's what it seemed to me. I'm fairly certain it's right there in color. It's not black and white. But that's when they knock Bond out again, and he is quickly taken to a plane, and he wakes up, and there's a woman there. And he asks for her name, and she says that her name is Pussy Galore, and he says he must be dreaming.
I have to admit, I pop with this line. I mean, it's juvenile. I get it. It's, some people argue it's sexist. He's a misogynist and all that stuff. Whatever. I can see the people's points, especially when every woman he sleeps with dies, basically. Unless it's the reward at the end of the movie. Then you don't ever hear from him again, usually. But the look on his face is he's like, I must be dreaming or whatever. And she's saying, kind of like with almost a little bit of a playful look on her face. I just go, Connery looks like he's having the most fun by far, leaps and bounds in this third movie, just being James Bond. And he really has a better command of it, too. It's very strong performance the way he's acting.
Absolutely. Like I said earlier, with his scene with Tilly, he seems entertained. And you know what? That's good. That's good. It brings an energy to it that we can really enjoy. Quickly, the information is given to him that he's a guest of Mr. Goldfinger, and says that in this jet he can go ahead, and he just has to be ready. And so he asked for a martini, shaken, not stirred, of course. That's
basically when it starts there too, the whole martini thing.
Yeah, and that's when she reveals that she's Goldfinger's personal pilot. And he asks again, because he asked this to Jill earlier, how personal are you? Because all these beautiful women, guy like Goldfinger, you think that he'd be doing his best with the ladies around him. But I guess not, because she says, I'm a damn good pilot. And that's when she goes to the front. The next part is really cool, because he asks if he can go, if any of his luggage survived, so he can go change, be presentable. And in the bathroom, there's this peephole in the door that he goes ahead and covers. And then he's looking around the bathroom some more, and there's another one within the mirror that he goes ahead and he covers up while he's using the smaller version of the device that he used in the car before. And he goes ahead and he puts it in his shoe. And that's when he goes ahead and takes it off the mirror again. And he's looking like he's shaving, so he's putting on shaving cream. And then he ends up spraying it right on the peephole there. And Mei Lee, that's her name. She jumps because she didn't expect that. And then quickly, they land.
For me, it's cool. It's a spy thingy, so it's cool, right? Yeah. You know, on these, it's like, again, why are you keeping them? All right, I'll buy your excuse, but two peoples, really? That doesn't make sense to me. This is his private plane. I can understand technically having one, but two, no. But it's a cool looking plane. I have to say that this is a very sexy small private plane. I mean, by today's standards, it's awesome.
If Goldfinger has some ladies involved, and they end up going to the bathroom, maybe Goldfinger.
I didn't think of that, but who would be piloting?
Pussy.
Right. So he's going to be looking at Miley or whatever her name is. That's
Well, it's his private jet.
That's a legitimate point that I will not argue.
He never has another woman with him.
Yeah, but two spy holes. I mean, anyway. No, there's some back and forth in here, and from my understanding from the books, Pussy Galore is a lesbian, and that's an angle that gets played out in the book in terms of some of the relationships and what happens. But that being said, here when you read it, I'm a pretty good pilot, you can take that as her being the dominant one on top, and him basically, chasing, and this little back and forth, and think it's pretty interesting too. But like you say, when they get in there, they're flying into, I think it's Kentucky, his stud farm, which was mentioned early on because he raises horses. Again, we're changing continents, we're changing big locales. I like how, of course, we're in the United States, rah, 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 go USA. I have to say this, I got to be honest with you. The one aesthetic I do not like from the 60s is the way the bras make the boobs all look pointy, like, to like an ice cream cone point or something. It just doesn't look good.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't, and I'm not trying to be negative. That's about one of the few things that date this film, if you really get to it. But you see, Pussy, being a strong female, has a group of women around her, and of course, because it's the South, people are playing like Southern music. I guess it's banjos or something when they get there and they show the horses.
I'm just going to say that in making this thumbnail, it was very hard not to try to include all of the ladies under Pussy Galore's command.
Yeah. Well, they put Bond basically in a little private cell, which I didn't know you had these private cells on your stud farm. And again, he's got a great suit that he changed and addressed. But then you get the secret underground, or I guess above ground layer of Goldfinger here at the stud farm. And you got a bunch of mafiosos in this giant room. They're playing pool, riding a horse.
Depending on how old it is.
What's that?
Depending on how old the estate is. Some estates did have it did like turn some of their lower areas into holding cells during war at times. So depending on how old that ranch is, that could explain that.
Yeah, and that's a legit point. But what I wanted to mention here, the cell's very sparse looking, but again, when you go to the big scene here where, you've got this beautiful wooden floor surrounded by these stone walls, but then the upper part is basically almost wraparound of where the mafioso, they're all suited up meeting Goldfinger in there. This is a phenomenal looking set piece. It's great. And again, it's not overly dated looking, but this is where you get the gigantic, megalomaniac type of Bond villain that got parodied later on. He pulls up this giant screen with this giant black and white photograph of Fort Knox. He goes to this big speech about, what his plans are, because he's trying to convince these guys to be a part of it. Then, of course, because he can, and I agree with this, that if you're going to be absurd, be absurd. He's got the rollaway floor that has the exact same damn thing on there, which I'm going, why does he need both? But it's ridiculous. But I like it, but it's stupid. Yeah. It's just showing off, and I get it. That doesn't make it a better film because it's bigger on a stage like this. But it was neat to see him talk about it, and I still have to say that even if they dubbed his voice in this film or whatever, I think the actor and the delivery is pretty good.
Did they dub his voice?
I think they did for a lot of it, or had to do some stuff phonetically.
He is a German actor, so right. I mean, yeah, I guess it could make sense, but I didn't know that. I thought it was all him. Well,
the scene is broken up. We'll put these together. It's broken up between a scene where Bond basically looks out the window of his cell and he kind of like smiles and just floats down, and the guy who's watching him, the Asian commie guy, is like, "What's going on?" And he walks in there, opens the door, steps in with his gun, doesn't see anything, and of course Bond, who was at the window, dropped straight down, did the elevator thing, somehow managed to ninja his way up without making a damn sound, and landed on the guy in a really horrible takedown, took his gun, and it ends up underneath the movable floor thing, listening to all the details of Operation Grand Slam. It's totally ridiculous and completely convenient. It looks great. His eyes as they zoom into this miniature Fort Knox where they're going to do something with the gold here. What's your take? I'll pause here and breathe.
I thought it was solid. I don't know how he got up there though. I mean,
because convenience.
That's easy. The ridiculous part out of all of this. Other than the fact that why is Fort Knox open like that? Why is the table cut in such a way where he made the model
so he can get in there?
The table.
Movie script.
Wow.
Come on, bro.
That's what I was saying before, but you go ahead.
We'll say this: despite the silliness and convenienceness and the weak writing part of this putting together, it does flow well.
Yeah,
it is. You do get a sense of urgency while Goldfinger is going over the plot and scheme here too, because again, this is showing you, and yes, they're telling you, but this is going to be the grand finale of the movie. We're already two-thirds of the way through the film, so it's mostly been a spy-ish type movie, which I prefer. There's been a little bit of action with the car stuff, and we'll have a big action scene here in a little bit to talk about. But it's really cool because he has to go to the mafia to get things to happen, which I popped. I thought, oh, that's pretty good because the mafia was definitely involved very strongly in certain areas of, let's just say, the American underground, as it were. And, some may argue today too, but I think they had a bit more authority in the way they look here in the 60s than maybe they would do now. But of course, Pussy sneaks up behind him, trips him, gets his gun. It's it's a continuation with it, but the whole thing with this nerve gas is it really is going to kill people, not just knock them out.
Yep.
So again, one guy kind of dissents, doesn't want to be a part of it. So Oddjob takes him out, kills him, compresses his car, but brings it back to Goldfinger instead of just letting him be in the room where everybody else gets gas, which messed up my brain that was trying not to think about things. But in the meantime, Bond sits down with Goldfinger and has a mint julep.
Wants to keep trophies, I guess.
It's if you think about it, you're like, well, why would he do that? It doesn't make sense. But Goldfinger's awesome here because despite this little break in action, it's pretty quiet. We see the
we miss an important part of that though, because
what's that?
The man who gets sent, Pussy, actually finds Bond down there, knocks him down after he's made a note and wrapped it up around the little shoe homing device, and so she leads him out to Goldfinger, and they meet Mr. I can't remember his name. He's only there for a few minutes, and so it doesn't show up on the on the list. But he slips the homing device into the guy's pocket.
Yep.
And that's when he's shot. We see the agents who he was with, or at least one of them he was with in Miami. He's following the car the best he can.
I think it's supposed to be lighter because he's the CIA op for America, but he's played by a different guy. Jack Lords was the guy doing it in the earlier film, and I think in Dr. No.
Yep. And so at that point, it seems Bond might be losing here because his plans aren't going through. And the agents don't know where he went because as soon as the guy was crushed, the homing device died. And so they just go back to the ranch to watch. And that leads to a moment where Goldfinger and Pussy are having drinks. And that's when Goldfinger has the idea, okay, we have agents watching us. We need to alleviate their minds. So go ahead and bring Bond out here, and we'll make it seem like he has control of the situation. And he tells Pussy to go change as well into something more presentable. That's what he says. So quickly, Bond is led out, and they're drinking mint juleps. I think he says something about them not being served as they are traditionally. But
yes, have you had a mint julep?
I haven't, but I know they're supposed to be in like a what's it called?
It's a special glass, and you have the sprig of mint in there. They're actually quite nice. They're very tasty. Well, we always had iced tea here in the South and tumblers like this, but I think you're right. I guess it just depends, but it's Kentucky, so you've got the horses, you've got them having the mint juleps. You got to have this. It's the cultural thing. That's what I like about it. You know, it's neat. It makes you feel like you're a part of it. I know it's stupid and it's dumb and B-level, but it works for me too. Alpha's going over stuff. To your point, Bond looks like he's losing, right? Goldfinger is not yelling and screaming. He's in charge, and it's who's going to win here, the final battle. I mean, we know the answer, but it's a nice little dance. And like I said, we're 2/3 of the way through the movie. We're actually getting more than that at this point, and we're like, okay, what's going to happen here too? But it's a great scene because Bond kind of stumbles through what the real plan is and figures out, no, we're not going to be able to take all the gold that's in Fort Knox out. If you have a bomb in there and you irradiate it and set off a dirty bomb from one of your commie bastard friends, then that makes all yours more valuable. Because, you know, supply and demand, you know, you get rid of some of that, the price goes up. And Goldfinger's just sitting there.
Like 57 years, and so it's untouchable. And all of Goldfinger's gold will be worth far more. It made sense to me.
But two things about the whole thing. Or really three. The gold standard, again, was set after World War II, Bretton Woods. You know, everybody had got their value of their money tied to the dollar via gold. Things would get a lot worse in the 70s and stuff. So this was a really modern idea at the time, which I think is very appropriate. And we can talk, and will later on as review Bond films closer to the current year here of 2021 about whether things might be socially acceptable in the Bond film or not. Certainly the way Bond treats women in this film may not be, by today's standards, considered appropriate, but certainly the names aren't. That being said, you can still like it. But here, I think it was an appropriate, interesting idea on how to have something going. Well, how can we have a bad guy with the gold? And it works. It's neat. You see Bond knowing a little bit about gold and getting a chance to use his brain, so when I think he's a big clod or whatever. But to your point, he's trying to figure his way out, and he does look like he's losing until, of course, Pussy comes out in a new outfit. I'd want to say a plum and lavender piece, bursting at the seams, if you will, and takes him for a walk to the old hay farm, sir.
Yeah, and
dare I say, Bond gets a little rapey before they make sweet, sweet love in the hay.
See, what's happening is they are tossing each other around, and Pussy is supposed to be enchanting him, we could say. Go ahead, throw in her charm at him. And so as they are at the point where they're tossing each other around, she gets knocked into the hay, and he slowly goes over and he takes a kiss, and she's fighting him for a moment, but then she slowly gives it.
It's a case of a woman saying no, 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 but if you kiss her hard enough, she can't get the word out, so it doesn't really count, and then she just yields.
Now that sounds rapey.
That does. No, but of course Bond wins her over by giving her the good soldier. You know what I'm saying? He uses the only thing he has that might turn the tide in this scheme of his, because he's gotten himself in where his brains can't get him out, so he has to resort to little James Bond. It's true.
Well,
if it wasn't for her sexual prowess in this particular scene, Bond would be dead.
Yeah. But we're going to have to go back to the effects of Little Bond later on, because as soon as the kiss is done, we see the planes go over and they drop a gas, and comically, it is so just hilarious about how bad these troops are falling from this gas.
It's a neat spectacle, I think, to see.
No, it's
silly. It's I agree with you, but it's neat seeing the plane fly over the Fort Knox. It's a fort. I mean, they have thousands of guards stationed around her. They tell you what the number is. It's cool. And the shots of everybody just laying there. In terms of just no CGI and just ground level effects where they filmed somewhere and people dressed up and all that, and then everybody falling down, I like it. I agree with you. It's complete buffoonery.
Yeah. If you had the gas, you see it coming down and they start choking a little, and then they're all falling, just not all at once like that, but that would have been better. They have these people acted a day in their life. But that's when everybody's ready. They put their masks on and they're driving through to the fort. And whenever they get to the gates, they take out a device and, okay, we're good to go. And they take off the masks, even though I think it would be in the air a little while longer. And they knock down the gate. And if you notice how they blow up the gate, the left door comes completely off at first. But then they show another angle, and the left door is swinging open instead.
And it was, to me, an excuse just to blow the gate, because that gate, they could have driven the truck through it. They just wanted to have an explosion.
Yeah, I thought they said something about it being electrified, which I guess against the car, that doesn't do that much. But I don't know.
Well, it's like when Oddjob threw his steel rimmed top hat at the statue. You see the hat just fly, and I was like, oh, is it going to be like a boomerang hat where it comes back to him? I thought that'd be kind of badass. As a kid, I thought that. And you see the head of the statue drop straight down, but when you see the head of the statue drop straight down, the hat's already sitting there upside down, so you can see the steel line part to it. And I know that's for the movie, so we can see what it's supposed to be and all that. But yeah, this movie has lots of those things. I mean, the more you watch these Bond films, the more you see them, and we don't care because it's Bond.
Yeah, you're right. And just the whole lead through, because they use the laser on the door, go ahead and knock it down, and they're taking in a cart. Well, no, they bring out a cart because when Goldfinger arrives in a helicopter, of course, flown by Pussy Galore, who gives a somber look towards James. So it seems they take the bomb and Bond, put him into the fort, and that's when they cuff him. But that's when we get a flash towards towards Felix, who is actually there at Fort Knox for some reason. And he sits right up and he's like, okay, we need to get going. They're all here.
Yep.
The bomb's here. And that's when the troops start getting up onto their feet. And so quickly we see as Goldfinger saying goodbye and they lower him down. It's just a matter of time before. And that's when the soldiers are attacking. And Goldfinger, he has a great scene in this where he steps out of view and changes into a costume for the soldiers, and that's when he shoots one of his own men. Yep. And he's telling the other soldiers, "Oh, they're deeper in." He steps back, picks up this one gun and just shoots him down through the back before quickly trying to make his way out. It is great. Just the little moments in there make it so good, and you can see, okay, I gotta get away.
So I think they did more for Goldfinger's character to be kind of smart occasionally, because that was kind of a neat scene, but despite how awesome this set piece is, looks fantastic as a vault. Whether it's realistic or not, I don't care. But when you're watching, you're not distracted by anything. This film is full of them to something else. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. When Oddjob's up there and Bond's working his way down, but Oddjob had threw one of the guys over the rail. So it's a nice little fall scene. The guy's got the keys.
The guy wanted to take out the fuse out of the bomb, but Oddjob, I guess he's ready to die. Tosses the guy over, and that's when he starts to make his way down towards Bond, and throws a hat towards him as Bond is trying to get the bomb handled. Mm-hmm. And
it's the only guy that has the keys. And the point is Bond is like, okay, that's good for me. I'll go get the keys. I'm like, God, do you have it so easy here, Bond? You're tied up literally half this damn movie, and everything literally falls in your lap, whether it's pussy galore or the keys here. But he gets his ass handed to him by Oddjob. This is a nice little battle. I do like it.
He kind of fell onto her lap. But anyway, when Oddjob goes down and he throws the hat in between the bars, and he quickly goes to go get it while Bond is on the side and he's getting up, that's when Bond gets his final blow, because he pretty much electrocutes him using the bars. This is his second electrocution in one movie. If you notice that.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, it's neat where he does the slide thing and does it, and he gets electrocuted. Apparently, he got burned really bad in this. Not Sean Connery, but Oddjob. Yeah, and took it like a pro. And he's definitely a villain we can go, or henchman we can go, okay, he's definitely memorable. This was a neat scene, and Bond getting a chance to use the hat. I like it. I mean, despite the silliness of the hat and all that,
I still think about him crushing that golf ball in his hand.
Well, it's the first time I ever saw anybody do anything like that in any type of movie with their hand. You know, later on I would see people do it with other things, but this by far is the first one. So again, it's filmed well. It's a nice little scene. Bond gets his chance to finally use his smarts again rather than overpowering a guy because he can't. I appreciate that. Bond's not using a gun here. So I do like this because in essence to me that should be almost the end of the movie because they conveniently get the bomb neutralized so it doesn't go off. But
within the last seconds.
Of course, within the 007 seconds. But Goldfinger had managed to escape. And this is what we just call overbooking, where it's just a little too much. It just gives us an excuse for the very last scene where Bond's taking off Goldfinger's on the plane, and it's like, uh-oh. And everything Bond had said earlier to Pussy Galore about, you know, a gun blowing open, you know, one of the windows and creating a vacuum and all this bad stuff happens in this brief struggle here with Goldfinger, and Goldfinger gets sucked out of the plane in a scene that actually to me didn't age well or whatever. And the problem with Goldfinger is he seems smart and competent, so in a way you could almost respect it. So to see him kind of go out this way like a punk, I kind of like because he didn't do anything that really drew a lot of heel heat from me, because he was kind of smart about what he did, and he underplayed it. He wasn't maniacal. He didn't have the evil ha 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 kind of laugh. He was just really, really strong in here, but the plane's getting ready to it's diving down. Pussy can't quite control it. They barely managed to land it, and of course Bond and Pussy make it safely to the ground, and it's implied that they make sweet, sweet love again.
Well, yeah, because we roll the credits. He tries to wave to the rescue that's flying above, but he's like, "No, you don't." Pulls her down, and they kiss into the parachute, and that's where this movie ends. But it's a really good movie.
Do you know what it ends with, though? But James Bond will return in Thunderball, which again, that was something we saw in the last film, so that's another thing they continue to. But
Thunderball, the one where all the drama comes, it's outside drama, but it's still drama.
Yeah. So I mean, overall, as much as I was nitpicking a few small things with the film, it's more just the recognition that this is a film that's the template for future James Bond films. We'll discuss that more as we go through some of the films, especially ones you aren't familiar with and haven't seen yet. But Thunderball will be next. It's a very exciting one to me. This, by far, of the three we've seen, is the best. Goldfinger. It's got a great villain in it. It's got some great set pieces. I think Connery really owns the scenes that he's in. It's a very sharp film with the way people look, the way they talk. There's definitely some smart writing, maybe some Britishy type writing with their jokes and their humor. We get our Bond one-liners. We get the beautiful women that manage to play a part somehow in Bond being successful, no matter how you get there. So this film, again, did gangbusters. It's iconic. Most people think it's one of the best Bonds, period, out of all of them. We'll argue that later. But for now, out of the three we've seen, I think it technically I would have to say it's the best of the three, but part of me wants to make a strong argument of From Russia with Love, and I actually like From Russia with Love better than Goldfinger. But I do like Goldfinger a lot. I think it's a great film. But I mean, it's a great film for anybody to see, I think, and it's aged well. You can rewatch this. What are some final thoughts you have for this?
Overall, this is just a great movie. Obviously, some of the things are okay. Yeah, you gotta go ahead and remember this James Bond. You just gotta give it to what it gives you, and it's. I will say this though. I think Bond's luck with the ladies. I understand that he did have Pussy Galore in this one, and oh crud, what's her name? Jill. Yeah. At the beginning, he doesn't quite have as much luck as it would seem as he does in the previous two. That's just my take, but
he's not Super Bond yet.
Super Bond, that's right. But it's still a great movie, and I enjoyed everything about it, from the villain to, of course, Sean Connery as James Bond, and even the henchman Odd Job. You just can't go wrong with this movie.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair, short and sweet assessment to it. You can't go wrong with Goldfinger. It's really the success of this movie, I think, cemented what Bond could be and has become over the years, regardless of whether we like the directions and the changes of an actors and who's owned it, directed, wrote, produced it, and the things that have happened in the world. But I can only imagine what kind of excitement it would have been to have seen a film like this when it came out in 1964. It must have been incredible for it too. Yeah, great film. There you have, ladies and gentlemen, Goldfinger, number 3 in the James Bond, going in order, watching all of them, many of them for the very first time from our millennial man, Gold Pixel. Professor Pixel here joining me, Rob, your host of the Xtreme Movie Show and our Bond recap. Check Professor Pixel and I out doing on our Xtreme TV viewing of Twin Peaks. We're going through some TV shows. That's one we've been going through. We're near the end of season 2 of that before we do the movie and continue on. Looking forward to doing Thunderball with all you guys next. I want to thank Backyard Moments for telling us all the many 1,001 reasons why he loves Bond films in general too, and not just the women. Okay, because it's a film that everybody can watch and enjoy.
I don't know who's asking for a lot of pussy in there.
Yeah, well, you get what you pay for, I guess. I don't know. All right. Maybe it's a backyard moment for him the first time he saw this movie. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night. For Rob, for Pixel, everybody here at the Xtreme Movie Show, good night. And as always, stay extreme.
Farewell.